perfect. Yeah, got a couple of minutes head start. So, yeah, I saw your chat, and I think you mentioned that the recruiters was asking for Carbon Black, EDR, red teaming, Splunk. Is they are looking for this skill set, or like what?
Well, I don't even know. She just sent me an email. I mean, she actually wanted it immediately. I guess they just asked me. I don't know if they wanted me. I don't know what she actually wanted. Like, if she wanted me to just tell her a little bit about them. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's. I think that's what maybe she's asking. Maybe she wanted to see more understanding. What if I understand carbon black? Cause when she called me on the phone, she asked me about carbon black. I told her I know about carbon black. There's EDR. So she
Mm-hmm.
asked me about Splunk too. I said, yes, I know about Splunk. But then she just sent me an email that she replied immediately with some points. So I don't really understand. I thought maybe I just felt like she was asking me maybe a little bit about them. Uh, so I was about to reply, but I just wanted to see from more experienced view from you. That's why I didn't send the email.
Mm-hmm. Okay, no problem. So, I so all these things, I'm just trying to get a free Splunk account here. Kumar IT. It's KMAR 703 IT. Yeah. Uh, okay. Okay. So yeah. So the thing. Okay. So Carbon Black is an EDR. So when you say EDR is a broader terminology, which is called endpoint detection. Carbon Black is a product which provides a EDR services, or is a EDR product basically, right? So so EDR and Carbon Black are not different. They are basically the same thing. So it's like I'm saying I want a car, but you are saying that you want a BMW car. So BMW is your Carbon Black, EDR is your car. Car is generic terminology. BMW is a brand. So Carbon Black is a brand which provides EDR solutions. That's pretty much it. And red teaming is um, so every SOC has got one or two areas, right? One is your SOC team, which is a blue team. Blue teams are always called defending teams, which are defending against an attack, right?
Right.
Right. And then there is something called as a red team, which are part of your SOC organization, but they are only looking to attack and find out gaps in your monitoring, right? So they predominantly come back and tell you, like, hey, you know what, I think there is a gap in your protection. I was able to what do you call, mm, how do I say that, attack or probably compromise a resource, and you never detected it,
Right.
right? So that's how they will do. So their job is not to defend, but their job is to only attack, like, offensive security. You're going on an offense. So why would you call it as offensive security? Because you are part of a SOC team, but you are trying to identify an attack before somebody does it, right? So red teaming is called as an offensive team, or it's called the attacking team within the SOC. So they are also part of SOC team, but they are the guys whose job is to identify a flaw in your application or anywhere else, attack it, and see whether SOC is able to identify them or not.
Right.
Right. So that's their primary purpose. Okay, let's look at. Sorry, what else did they ask you? And Splunk is a SIM solution, SIEM solution, which we all know. You have used Splunk, you know how Splunk really looks like, right? So you got a Splunk instance installed on your machine?
No.
Okay. um, do you think you want to give it a try, install that agent on your machine, or install Splunk on your machine, so that we can
Yes, yes.
yeah. So have you like used Splunk? How far have you used Splunk? Like, how comfortable are you with Splunk? Probably that question sounds better.
Well, I mean, I've downloaded. I had the free trial before the 30
Mm-hmm.
days trial. So um I learned about it, and I watched the videos on fundamentals. I did I particularized it, and I watched another fundamental 2 video, and
Mm-hmm.
that's how I wrote the exam.
Okay. Let me share my screen. So Splunk has something called as boss of SOC,
Boss
right?
ups.
Yeah. So this is called Splunk. This is 16.4 GB worth of Splunk data, right? So I'll ping you this link. What I would suggest you do is, uh, right, I just pinged you in a chat group there. So what you need to do is go download this data, create another email account, download Splunk on your instance, on your machine, install it, follow these instruction steps. You don't need to do anything else. When you download the entire this Splunk instance, whatever that is, uh, go to this etc path on your installation, on your Splunk instance, on your local instance,
Yeah.
right? And just copy this data there. Whatever you see the data here, you can just go copy it, and then, oops, my bad, it started cancel. Okay, so when you download it, um, um, and then when you restart your Splunk, you'll see all this data appearing in your Splunk now. So you can go start playing around.
Oh, okay.
You will have precisely 22 point some XYG 22.5 GB of data to play around with from every nook and corner,
Oh, that's nice.
right? So you don't need to download any new data, or you can just use this data. So
Okay.
you have this is a version 2, you have version 1, version 3 as well, which you can
Mm.
go and start playing around with, right? So these are all the different data types or source types, right? So you have got Linux, you have got your MySQL, you have your Netcat, you have got your OS query, your Palo Alto networks, your performance of the system, your PowerShell, right? Your stream, which is your Splunk stream logs, your semantic endpoint logs, your Windows logs, Windows event logs, your ping logs, your Unix logs. So you've got a lot of logs in there which you can go play around with, right? So, but go and download this data, register yourself on Splunk, uh, Splunk online demo. I there you go. 1 second. Let me.
Kumar, good luck is your student on Udemy on the SOC. So I think he has all of those 3 trainings which you did, right? End-to-end Splunk. He's
Yep.
got access to those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then you can look at it. Good luck. So you can look at that videos. Setting up of Splunk will also be there, part of it. So let's. Oh my God, this guy is asking business email. Ravi, have you got your Sai Equity email?
Yeah, that's ravi.jagalapudi@saikriti.com.
Ravi.jagarla.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah.
That's right.
Sai
ACUI
ACUITY.
ty.com. Yeah.
Okay. Title. I don't know. Okay, required.
Give me my number. So yeah, 798986
7989
86 3647.
7.
UITY.
UITY. Yeah, I agree. So probably you should get an email then.
Let me check. I think it's on its way, not at on my inbox.
Yeah.
So good luck. Will you be able to frame that email to the recruiter basis what Kumar has just told you now?
Yeah, yes. I mean, I pretty much understand what they are, but I don't know. I was just thinking maybe if there's more thing to it. That I mean, because I mean the recruiter since it's a recruiter. Because I mean, if I have to give the recruiter something more solid for me to be able to get through the recruiter stage and get an interview.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. Okay, let's talk about when we're talking about Splunk. Let me give you a brief about like what Splunk and all about is. So you have used Splunk. So do you know what is an index? What is the source type? How do you search the data?
Yeah, index, source type, and yeah, I know. I mean, in the index is where the data is being what do I call it? Like it's being indexed. Like we have the main index. Like it's like I don't
Which
know.
is stored. It's recorded there.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
So index is nothing but like
category or something.
yeah. No, it's like a index of a book.
Yes.
Yep, right. Index of a book. And so it's like your broad categories, like index of a book has got chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. So every chapter determines has a topic, like if it's a let's say suppose it's a physics book or something like that. You'll have each individual topic which you will want to cover in there, but each individual topic will have subsections as well. And that's what your your source types would be, right? If say you're talking about Apache could be web server. So index can be web server, and you'll say Apache, right? Again, your index could be operating system, and you can have source type as Linux, Linux audit, and Linux secure. Your index could be SQL or like database, and you can have all these different source types within that. So each individual source type will provide you different type of data, specific type of data. Right. So that's how you will want to understand Splunk is set up. Right. And then you will also start querying Splunk. I'm not able to find out that free site which this guy was given. I wish I could have got that, but I don't know, for some reason I think I had found out. I showed it to my team members as well. Web demo. Yeah. So, but so how would you want to query your data? Is like, you want to write up Splunk queries. So I think there is one good site for you to do is go splunk.com. This is a good site for you to look at your queries. Let's say suppose you want to write something for Windows security logs and say go. This guy will help you understand all the queries, like how do you write a query, right? Source type is equal to this, user should not be equal to this, and the event codes, what you should look for, search common event codes for suspicious behavior, Windows logon dashboard, find passwords in username field, so you can go forward and read like how does have somebody written a query for that, right? So you will find out these activities. So this is one way of writing a query, right? But what you have done is you also have Alien Vault. Like I'm just trying to show you for your understanding of the logs perspective. So if say suppose you want to go for Windows events here, right? So you've got your Windows logs here. You can configure more. You can say event. Okay, we have something here. Let's go figure out what is that. So where is that? Where is that? Where is that? Windows events. You have let me search this. Event group, event type, event violation, event priority, event type. You don't have event code here. Let's go back. Windows. Event ID 9, AWS sensor. Draw access. Yeah, so if let's say, so example, this is your log which you want to write in Splunk. right?
Yeah.
Right. So you understand this one. So your source type is Windows Event ID Security. Your task is log on. Your log is like this, task is 9 or whatever, how it's ever it's representing, right? Whatever
Yeah.
it's trying to say, it's event ID is info or, source is sysmon. So you'll identify that particular piece of field name and you'll write it up a log and say keyword and everything else. So, and then forget about this regex and everything else, but you will clearly say that my index is this. Search the log under index, look at the source type where the logs is there, look at a task which is called log on, and the keyword which Splunk should look at for is audit failure, right? When it does that, it identifies specific item which says, okay, I am looking at something called as login failure or audit failure, and the logs will appear. From there on, you'll start investigating further. And what do you want to say? You want to produce the result as by password username, where password is a field name and username is a field name.
Yeah.
Right. So you will need to understand what is an index, what is what is my task category, and that fields has to be, you have to be aware of that fields before you can write, before you can go and filter out your data. Similarly here, like you're in the Windows event activities, primarily you need to understand what is your event code, right? So you need to understand what is your event code, and for that I think yeah, not this one. Yeah, this one. Yep. So if you see here, you'll see a lot of event IDs here, right? So, and all these event IDs are related, are all required for you, right? So if I'm going here, you look at, say, suppose account logon, right? So account logon, these are the event IDs, right? So Kerberos, these are different activities like, credential validation, Kerberos validation, credential validation, and then, 4846, account logon activities there. Then you can look out account management activities where you say account was created and account was enabled. So when you are looking into a Splunk log for a Windows activity, you look for these field headings. You'll say my event ID should be 4722, which is an example of here, like say 4723, right? Where is that? 4723, yeah, right? An attempt to change the user's password account. Active Directory password change attempts. So you'll say source is Windows Security. Your event code is 4723. Source should not be a dollar account. So what happens is sometimes in your Windows environment, you'll get a dollar account as well. Dollar accounts are nothing but system accounts. Always remember, if you see an account name or a user name with a dollar account, that means it's a system account.
Okay.
Right? It's a system account. It's not a user account. It's a system. So all your system also will have a dollar account, because if it needs to communicate in the backend with other workstations, it will not use your username, right? It will use most privileged accounts, which is your system accounts, which you will never create. It's automatically created.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and you'll ignore service accounts, like anything which starts with SVC, you'll ignore with service accounts, right? And then you will try to understand how many password change attempts were made. Example, right? Something like that. Right? Again, failed attempts to log into a disabled account, right? So you're looking at Windows security events. Your event code is 4625. Let's suppose you have 4625 here. You don't. Okay, let's do this. 4625. That's strange. Okay, now so like, yeah, there you go. Log on 4625. So your account was failed to log on, right? Then you'll go and research more. What you can do is you can even go research further. Windows event code. Oh, come on, man. Yeah. And then there is one site called ultimatewindowsecurity.com. Beautiful site. I would say extremely beautiful site because it gives you everything related to your Windows accounts. Let me ping you this as well in your chat so that you have a record history of it. So now it tells you in detail about that particular event ID alone, right? So now you look at what is the status and substatus code, whether the user account was existing or not, right? So the reason I'm talking about all these things is you need to understand how do you look at the log. You need to understand first of all where the log is coming from. Using Splunk, you know it. How do you use a Splunk? You know it. How do you search a log? You know it. But what to look for in Splunk in that particular log is what you need to identify, right? So if you are looking into a Windows activity, you need to look at multiple field names, which is what? Oh my God, where is that? Yep. This is what. These are some of the field names. Your event time, host name, event type, event ID or event code, source name, version. You need to identify all these fields. Identify what is the most interesting field name. From there on, you can create your own query, which is something like this, right?
Yeah.
Which is something like this. You say that, okay, stats count by, give me the username, client username, host name, index, and date. So that's how you'll write it. So this side is very good. If I okay. Right. So account deleted via event ID corresponding, right? So you can go and look at it how people are writing different type of queries for different type of activities. So you can look at multiple things here. You can look at all these different category of use cases, like CrowdStrike based alerts, or yep, sorry, my bad. CrowdStrike. Again, CrowdStrike is also an EDR solution,
All right.
right? Yeah, so you can look at it. So source type is CrowdStrike. You're looking at multiple field names. I'm not sure what this guy is trying to do. It's CrowdStrike audit event correlation, probably not necessary for us. Then you can say enterprise security based alerts, which is that's how the SOC will look at list of incidents and closing comments. You can look at the events. You can look at list of ES correlation searches. You can probably this is you can find out. So you'll have a lot of things which you can write up here, or predefined use cases in Splunk, right? And okay, let me look at networking. Sorry, yep. Let's look at networking. No, this is networking. Yeah. So let's say suppose you are investigating by MAC IP or IP for all VPN connections through Cisco IC. So index is equal to your Cisco index, your IP address, and your IP location, and your all the different fields what you want to write, right? But the most important thing is, do you know how do you pull out field names, right? So for that, you can do table, you can do stats, count by your field name there. You can say time chart, or you can say or you can say yeah, you can visualize it. Some of the other areas, how do you output the result in Splunk, right? But you're predominantly the way you write your queries would be, you can say index is equal to say suppose firewall, right? Your
All right.
source type is equal to Palo Alto, right? You can say source type. So source type is equal to Palo Alto, and then you'll say okay, or you can say my source is equal to 10.10. Or 101.10.10. Okay, so that's what my source IP. This is a bad IP, right? Again, if I can say, just for representation, I'm saying bad IP. I can say this, and then I look at it. Okay, what is that output I want to look at? I can say table, provide me the underscore time, my source, my destination, my source port, destination port, and yeah, and anything else which I have. So once I run this query, I'll see the time, the source, source and destination port, right? Then I can add more context to it, but we'll talk about it later. Yeah, we can talk about it later. But the usage of Splunk is all about understanding your index and source types. Once you understand this, then your fields in each source type, which is also called as data sources, right? You need to understand your each source type and what type of fields are provided in that. The third thing is identifying interest.
Interesting field.
Yeah, identifying interesting fields. What is necessary for you? Picking up those activity. So let's look at an example, right? Let's try to look at, just because we don't have to spend a lot of time on this Splunk, but I'll give you an example. Let's say identifying that. You want to write a use case for identifying when good luck wakes up in the morning, right? So what do you think is the most interesting fields you'll be looking at? If you're putting the data together, what is the most interesting thing, or what is one thing or couple of things you'll be, what you're keen to look at?
I mean, the index has to be my name though.
Yep, exactly. So index is equal to, say, your your family name, right? So your family name, right? And then source type could be you, because you are the data source, right?
Yeah.
Right. And then what is the other interesting thing which you look at? You look at
Like
the time you are getting up, right?
Yeah.
So you can say that, you can clearly say that, okay, underscore time should is equal to, say suppose 8 a.m. or say suppose 6 a.m. 6 a.m. That's how you will search for. So the most interesting time is 6 a.m. Let's say suppose now that similarly, now you are looking for what was the last domain or last website I accessed from your logs. How will you identify that? So you will say that, okay, you'll say table. Okay, so last is in last 15 minutes, right? So in last 15 minutes, what is that site which you accessed? What do you think a field name would be for site? Field name would be URL or domain, right? You'll say the output should be table, URL or domain. In the settings, in the time settings, you'll say time is equal to say last 15 minutes. You can, how what I'm saying, right? You can select the time from the left right hand side drop down there. So that's how you look at, right? But let's say suppose once you're accessing this, and in last 15 minutes you have got, say suppose 10,000 URLs. What will you do? How will you identify that? If somebody is asking you, good luck, tell me how many unique URLs did you access? So then what you'll do is you'll take the same URL, do it, and you'll, instead of table, you'll remove everything and say statistics. You're statistically looking at unique value. You say stats count by URL, which will tell you statistical number of URLs, unique number of URLs you have accessed. So the output would be URL 1 accessed 50 times, right? URL 2 access 100 times, URL 3 access 5,000 times, and then so and so forth. So now you'll know in last 15 minutes which URL was accessed how many times, and you'll clearly know that this is URL 3 is the outlier which was accessed 5,000 times. But and that's what the difference is. With table, you will just list everything. Even the duplicates will be listed. With stats command, you will only list unique values and count each and times each value was seen. Example. There are the Splunk site is there. You can find out more details, but as an example, I'm just saying you.
Right.
Yep. So that's the difference. That's how you would want to go. And if you look at here, most of the time it starts with stats, right? So investigate IP through Palo Alto logs. Index is equal to your Palo if you want, and stats C, sum as bytes by XYZ. You will only understand all these things when you are able to install the agent on your machine and then start querying the data against it. Write up queries. So for this one, search all traffic by source and action, create table. So it says source should not be equal to this, source should not be equal to that, source should not be this IP, action should be allowed, IP location. So this is one of the IP location is a built-in functionality of Splunk. The moment you say IP location, Splunk will invoke other functionality whereby it already has a database of all the IP addresses and its location, where the result would automatically indicate the IP address and its geolocation. You don't need to pull any information from outside, right? So Splunk has got a lot of built-in functionality. So I can let's look at an example. Splunk IP location. Yeah. So you see that. You see this information. So you can say source type is equal to access, IP location, client IP, and fields IP location star. So and this is what you'll get. You see. You are not pulling any data from anywhere else, but you can get IP locations within Splunk itself. Even you can resolve IP addresses within Splunk. So these are all the fields, or these are all the type of commands which you can use. Probably you can go through this for your benefit, but where did you go? Oops. Yeah, there you go. So right, so you can add all these commands, stats, table, all the things are there, which will help you kind of write up queries. Confused?
No.
Okay, fine. So
Uh,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I'm just trying to imagine. So you writing all the queries. Does this start from when you get a lot? When do you start writing this query? Because I mean, you don't. Do you during the work during work? Do you just start writing queries, or a
Um,
lot are call first?
so okay. So if you see the screen here, this is a Splunk Essential Security app. So sometimes there are predefined queries written in Splunk, and there are times when you want to write a query, like a custom query, right, based on a custom log, right? So for you to pull out data, that's how you'll write a log. That's how you'll write a query.
Right.
Right. So based on scenario, like, as I said, if you want to understand when good luck was able to, what sites good luck accessed in last 15 minutes, you write a query for that, right? If you see an alert, let's say suppose you see a firewall alert, or you see a EDR alert, right? Or you see a antivirus alert, or let's consider example of you see a firewall alert. So now you want to look at a firewall alert, but you also want to add a lot of details in there. What will you do? So let's look at this one here, right? So you can say that index is in. Okay, let's look at this. Come on. Index is equal to index is equal to firewall, source type is equal to Palo Alto, right? So now what you want to do is you want to say IP location as well. In your logs, you never got the location. So you can say source, right? Now you're getting the source. So what you do is, now you have the information, you can say table, source, city, country, right? And then you can say destination and whatever other fields like port information or whatever that is. Now you are adding more context. Now you want to know what really happened, statistical wise. Now you're seeing multiple IPs repeated. So what you'll do is you'll take the same query instead of instead of table, you'll say stats count by your source, but you'll say values city values you entry country and values source port values destination port. So now what you are trying to do in this query is simply just by saying that, okay, for this IP, tell me everything what happened, which country it came from, which city it came from, what is the source IP, what is the destination IP, right? So, okay, let's look at stats. Yeah, there you go, right? Yep, exactly. So if you see here, that's how it does. So it says stats by, right? Um, I was looking for a simpler example. Stats command in Splunk. Nope, 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 nope. Nope, nope, nothing. Yeah, something like this. Something like this. So you see stats count as total purchase, distinct count, DC is distinct count, product ID as total product ID, values is nothing but it provides a unique values about it. So what's my source IP? How many times it was purchased? Total number of purchase was 14, but 14 items were purchased 134 times. And what are the different product IDs? In one shot, I'll know what happened with this source IP or this VIP customer, right?
Yeah.
Same thing, again, probably this is another screenshot, but that's what I was trying to tell you is this is what you identify or this is what you'll get when you use a stats command. Similarly, like here, right? So you want to say stats, value is price as price by product name, right? So you are pulling a different field name for that associated field. So tell me how many people are living in Kumar's house. Give me that number, right? And so the query was earlier was tell me how many people are living in Kumar's house, but also tell me what is their age group or what is their gender, right? So I say stats values gender as gender by Kishore's family size or whatever that is. So it will tell me, oh, I've got 4 different gender types or 2 distinct gender types with XYZ details. So once I go inside, I'll find more details. Like similarly like here. Yep. Yeah, exactly like this one. You see here? So now you're saying that you have a time and you have whatever searches were run against that thing. Probably not the exact query, but the results would look something like this. I don't know what this is doing, but yeah. So that's in a rough how would Splunk, you would look like Splunk and what you do with Splunk. So there are a lot of things which you should do in Splunk or, in a SIM. Again, the primary thing is identify your indexes, your source types, identify the fields in each source type, the importance of the data source, and identify what are the interesting fields. Once you know this, you need to know the commands to write a query, right? That said one thing. If there is enterprise security, security, there is enterprise security app installed in your Splunk instance, then you need to look at all the Splunk enterprise security dashboards, which we'll look at it. Hold on a second. Enterprise security dashboards. Something like this. So you have your first dashboard, right? Like, you know, what's happening overall in your network. Then you have your notable events. Then you can look at the security posture. Yeah, and then you can look at your Spectre meltdown vulnerabilities, and you know your incident review dashboard. You know, not something which I was looking for. It's way too small. Come on. If I had the Splunk app installed, or probably in the videos you can see, I would have shown in there. But yeah, Splunk enterprise security, asset dash, no. There could be something. Yep, something like this. So this is one of the dashboards within Splunk. So this similarly, Splunk has got a lot of dashboards. Let's visit this page and see what. So you've got access center, you've got protocol center, you've got your asset center, you know, yeah, here. You should go through this one. You can look at your security postures, your event, your security domains, your endpoint dashboards, right? So you look at your endpoint, what it does, like, you know, your endpoint is nothing but your malware, right? So let me ping you this. You can go through this one. So you can look at your malware dashboard, you know, top infections, first time, look at your malware activity. You can search within your dashboard. No, you can look at your dashboard logs. You can just put a signature name or file name or destination name or username. It'll provide you the log immediately, right? So you can search that as well. So in your enterprise security, you have dashboards, you have your security posture, you have your incident review dashboard, you have your predictive analysis, you have your event investigation, and your advanced threat, like, you know, threat intelligence, your user activity monitoring, risk analysis, and your security domains, your access, endpoint, network, identity dashboard. For example, you know, what does it do? It looks at access, right? So what are the areas it looks at? It looks at your identity center. So this is the area which you'll have a lot of information around. You can just go through this one and understand. Probably it might be too much, but, you know, from an enterprise security point of view, you'll know, okay, what you should be reviewing in Splunk, right?
Yeah.
So have you worked in enterprise security? You might say no, but I know what is there in enterprise security. You've got a lot of dashboards, pre-built dashboards, which you can go look at it, probably configure it according to our environment, making sure that I know what am I looking at it, and you know, add some of my custom dashboards in there, or modify some of the dashboards, or clone some of the dashboards, and then work on something else like that, or add for that matter, like add threat intelligence feeds in there, right? So you can add threat intelligence feeds as well from the internet, which will tell me like how many IPs did I match in my firewall logs, where did I match, right? So some of the activity which did you match. So you can look at some of the files you downloaded, how did the file activity matched, what did I see, based on that I can take an action on that, right? If I have created an alert or created an email response for it, I'll get an alert for that and I can go and respond for that.
Is it the job? Is it the job of the SOC analyst to create a lot?
Depends. So if your SOC team, if your entire SOC team, if your SOC team is a small team, like it's not more than 10 or 15 people, and then you don't have a dedicated support for Splunk who can create your content like use cases, then yes, SOC team would do it. But in cases, if it's a bigger company and there is a dedicated team to create these use cases, that team will do it. Okay, so it depends how big the team is, and and who should do, where the responsibility lies basically. So the first thing I would suggest is go download Splunk, download this Security Essentials app. If you know how do you do that, so download this Security Essentials app, play around with it, look at the use cases, do the GitHub, the bots here, the one, download this data, integrate the data into Splunk, see how it works for you. Okay. So some of the questions could be, have you written use cases? Do you know how to search the data? How would you search a specific unique values? Okay, in a firewall log, what is more important for you? How would you search a firewall log? Or in a Windows log, how would you search for a specific activity, right? So an event code based activity, something like that. So they'll ask you your technical skills and then convert into a Splunk based question. That's what I believe.
Okay.
Right. So its example is like, okay, if you have got a failed login attempt in a Windows activity, how would you search for it? Right. So what you will say that, okay, failed login attempt in Windows is like 4624 or 4625, either ways, I don't remember the exact event code, but yeah, you can say that index is equal to my Windows, source type is equal to security event logs, my event ID or event code is like 4624, and then I'll just leave it at that and then run the query and see what fields are coming in, who has failed. Probably I'll write a stats command to figure out how many unique users are there and how many times did they fail. And then, based on that, I'll look at some other event codes, some other subsets or field names, like, subtype events, where I look at, whether the account was disabled or what. And then, probably that's how you build up your answer.
Okay.
So, but again, doing this boss of SOC for at least for Splunk at home will give you a lot of perspective. Will give you a lot of understanding about how Splunk is there, how do you write it, because you can look at this gosplunk.com any day. Any day you can look at it and say, okay, let's say for malware alerts. Okay, so how do I write a basic malware alert? So, okay, index is equal to malware, category something high fidelity, or leave it. Just type index is equal to malware and see what data you get it. Right? And then you start, from there on, you start building it. You add one thing and see whether the query works. If it doesn't work, you can delete it, come back. Right? You can if you think that these alerts are way too much for you, you can go and look at simpler alerts, like your where is that? Yeah, your Windows event log security. Right? Successful logons. How you look at successful logons? Your event code is 4624. Your logon type is, what is logon type? You quickly go to your ultimate Windows security site and then say, for event code 4624, what is logon type 2, 7, 10, and 11 means? you start reading about it, right? So one other thing, okay, probably I'll talk about those books later, but yeah. The other thing which you said was about your EDR solution. EDR, it's a, okay, let's look at it. If you have a EDR activity, you have NIDS, umbrella. I don't think so. We have got the EDR solution here. So EDR is nothing but your endpoint detection and response, which is the next level or next generation antivirus solution, or better than antivirus, right? Your EDR solution will have your antivirus, your traffic monitoring system, like your IPS, right? Then your end point, or sorry, device control, which is controlling your USBs, your whether you can copy data in encryption, decryption, everything. It controls that. Then it looks at your vulnerability, not vulnerability, but your antivirus, endpoint protection, device control, your antivirus, traffic monitoring, and then your behavioral monitoring, right? So it does that like a heuristic. So it also looks at your traditional antivirus, but also looks at traffic monitoring, device control, behavioral, and some of the EDR solutions also have your vulnerability, like vulnerability scans, right? They have host-based firewalls configured within them, right? So they can do everything of that sitting on an agent. And that's the beauty of EDR solutions, is that they can do a lot of details and they can capture a lot of details about a system. So basically what you can do with this, so this basically EDR solutions provide you protection on the network, off the network as well. Because this system, these EDR solutions are installed on your system and connect to a cloud-based EDR solution, right? So it can be like, you suppose you have your Carbon Black, right? So you have your agent which is installed on Kumar system, right? And then the central console will be in the cloud, right? So wherever Kumar system is available, it'll still, if it's connected to internet, it can still reach out to the central console. So it means if the network, if the system is, if the Kumar system is off the network and there is something bad is happening, still Kumar system will, the Kumar system agent, Carbon Black agent will let the central agent know that something bad has happened. In turn, that will alert your SOC team members, right? So what type of alerts can that be? That can be your virus alerts, that can be your exploit, so your virus alerts, your exploit based alerts, right? That somebody is trying to exploit SQL vulnerability, or how would I say that, your RDB vulnerability, or DNS vulnerability, whatever that is, right? And then you have your behavioral, like behavior based alerts, like outbound communication, right? First seen outbound communication to XYZ sites which I've never seen in last 7 days, right? This is behavioral, right? New process execution, right? Why this process execution? I've never seen this process execution. Or connection to new IP address. I've never seen this behavior happening earlier, right? So it can do that. It can identify that. Or you say that, you know, or you can say that, you know, restrict from a specific location. So, you know, access, okay, restriction, I would say that, you know, files or like, you know, executable was run from a restricted location. Why was a file run from a restricted location? What's the importance of it? And you'll go and look at it. If primary example, if an exe or an or executable is running from your temp location, why is it running from that location? What is the importance of it? You know, why is somebody running an executable from a temp location, right? Something like that. And say, you know, or in the behavior could be seen that, you know, large uploads, you know, large upload was done to a specific site, or you know, or user accessed indicators of compromised site, or because that's a restricted site, you know, you should not be accessing it, but somebody accessed it, right? So something like that. So this could tell us that, you know, something really is bad is happening. So let's look at carbon black process flow diagram. EDR process flow. Now let's look at this one. I know CrowdStrike. Yeah, CrowdStrike process tree. So something like this. So this is how it will show in an EDR solution. You'll see something like this. Okay, I have, come on. That's okay. I've got process explorer.exe, which is running on your system, that spawned Acrobat Reader 32.exe, that ran EULA.exe and CMD.exe, and it's doing this type of activity. Have you, if in a traditional sense, what is Acrobat Reader? It's a PDF reader. It's a document reader. Why would document reader run command.exe, which is a command prompt within your system? Why would it run? And that's what EDR looks at it. That's your CrowdStrike or any other EDR solution looks at it and, you know, tries to identify this is not normal. I don't know why it's running. Similarly here, your Explorer, and it's running some random file that is spawning your SVC host, and that's running other files which is malicious. So why it is running? Why it is running? Okay, come on, load. Damn. Come on. Yeah, this is simple. Okay, so similarly, like this one now, right? Your endpoints. Okay, this is a file. You got a data source. You got an alert which was created for this particular activity. You found a Trojan type, waited for user approval. So this is what you did on the EDR solution, right? Oh, come on, this is way too small. You can let it look at. Yeah. Oh man, my bad. Where do I see a good one? I'm sorry, I'm not able to find the large picture.
Okay.
Yeah, oh, this is carbon black. Yeah. So explorer.exe spawns multiple iexplorer.exe. One iexplorer.exe has got 3 files. One of the file is spawning like this, and this is how you'll see in an EDR solution. This example itself is from carbon black. So, okay, you saw explorer.exe, you saw multiple files running, and you see iexplorer.exe. iexplorer.exe launched multiple exes. One of them was jp2launcher.exe, which ran Java. Java ran notepad.exe, and notepad.exe started running 2 other files. Why? Right? The question is why? And that's what you will explore, right? You look at this process flow, like, you know, you look at this process flow and try to identify why it is happening. But For that, you should know this. This is a beautiful document, which I'll share it with you now. It shows you what happens when you log into your Windows.
Okay.
Go through this one, you'll really love it. It says 468 first activity runs what? It says initialization. So if you have time, go read it. Okay, Windows logon process initiates, and this is the event code. This is the actual event which generates, right? Then there is another 4688, which is LSAS password dumping, right? The other day you said, if your password is dumping using LSAS, right?
Yes.
Right, exactly. This is what has happened. So it says at this lab in the second part, step 1, the LSAS local security authority subsystem process initialize LSAS components process that contains components of the Windows security subsystem. Fine. Then what happens? You see a successful system startup. Awesome. System is started up now. Now what will happen? Right? Then you'll say 4624. Your local system account logons. Your local system account, right? So you say local system, you see system, right? So your local system account logs on. That's 4624. Then you say 4627. Group membership was checked, right? You'll check it, group membership. What is a group membership? And if you go back and see system account, right? And then security package loading, right? Security system. So I'll share this PDF with you, but go through this one. It's a very interesting document. It will give you the high level perspective about what happens when you log onto a system.
Okay.
Okay. The other thing which you would want to do is 13 cube. This site, go to this site. There's a YouTube channel, right? So you see you've got a lot of things here. Right? Process genealogy. So this is one good thing. Process. This is where it picked up from. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. This is what I was talking about. Exactly. So what happens when you log onto your system? You have system, your different processes run. Your CRSS, WinInit, WinLogon, services, LSAS, user init. What is the flow? How it's interconnected? You need to know that. So this site is very good for you in terms of understanding, how your Windows actually works. How does a flow work? What is smss.exe, right? What is crss.exe? What is WinInit? What is WinLogon? Because in EDR solution, um, yeah, you see here, WinInit services. So let's put this into perspective. Where is that? Yep. So you see this WinInit and services. So where is WinInit? Services. SVC host. Where is SVC host? WinInit, services, SVC host. Now you understand why these threes. So if you look at it the first time, right, you'll have a question. Why services.exe is run by WinInit? But would you know why this is by default it's running it? You need to know this. Right? So when SVC, why SVC host? Why there are so many SVC hosts is running in your system? Right? If I say more details, I'll see a lot of SVC hosts which is running in my operating system, right? Where did you go? Okay, probably it'll be upstairs. Huh? SVC. Huh. I don't know. What did change here? Performance, process, the apps. Yeah, your service host, SVC host is running. So you see SVC host, you can go back and check the properties and you see SVC host, right? So there will be multiple SVC hosts which is running and supporting your Windows system itself, right? So in your task manager itself, you will be able to see why group tree. Yeah. Probably not here. I'm not able to see it here, but this is how the process looks like in your execution as well. So you need to probably go through this one, understand this one, and then kind of go from there on. Right? So that's what EDR does. It looks at it. It basically, so how EDR works. EDR has an agent which sits in your operating system kernel, in your core operating system, and looks at everything what's happening within your operating system. And then based on its heuristic and machine learning and artificial intelligence based detection, it performs some actions. It has some pre-built alerts. It has got some pre-built configuration or pre-built rules what it looks at, or behavior of it, and then alerts you for that, like how it did here, how it did here. Right? So you see here, like how the process tree is spawning, how many things are getting spawned. So you can go and look all these things into this. EDR will provide you a lot of insights into this one, right? It also looks at, it gives you the command which this tool was running or the attacker was running, or which is pre-configured. So that's what EDR is. So EDR sits in your kernel core operating system, and from there on, it identifies all the activities, but it basically looks at your antivirus, traffic, device control, behavior, vulnerabilities, host-based firewall, everything else. EDR solution. So your protection, features. So you see this? No, this one. Come on. Way too small. Yeah. See, behavioral, asset discovery, intrusion detection. It can do that. Probably this is Alien Vault, but EDR. EDR components. Yes. So okay, so let's look at this. I don't know why this so this is one of the solution which one of my colleagues recently looked at it. So this has got your endpoint detection and response, your endpoint protection, your user behavior analysis, and network traffic analysis. Right? So these are some of the other areas, which is like endpoint protection, security orchestration, case management, threat intelligence, collaboration, response. But let's look at the previous diagram. Oh, no. This is, yeah. This 4 or 5 primary things is what your your EDR can do. It can do. Yeah, so it has network firewall, application and device control. Sometimes your it does memory exploitation, repetition analysis, advanced machine learning, emulators, antivirus, behavior monitoring, network firewall as well. So an EDR can do a lot of that stuff as well.
Okay.
So it's like all in one thing which almost does everything for you. Like it acts like your local host firewall, it acts like antivirus, and it as I said, it looks at your behavior analysis, as I said, new process creation, first seen, connection to new IP addresses, somebody's large, uploading large files, user behavior, endpoint protection, detection and response, like blocking an activity, and the network traffic analysis, which is your, XYZ traffic scene, right? And then exploit as well, and antivirus as well. So is that a little bit clear, or you're still confused?
No, it's clear.
Okay, perfect. So, okay, coming back to where were we? Yeah. So you said carbon black, EDR, red teaming. So yeah, red teaming again is somebody's trying to attack. That's a whole different thing. You just can't go and do it. But we need to talk about. I need to show you examples of how do you do that. What do you do that? For that, you need to understand how Windows works. How the operating system works and what you should look for, why something is suspicious, what is PowerShell execution, how an attacker can come in, what are the areas how he can come in. For that, something you need to follow upon MITRE ATT&CK framework, right? So you need to look at it. These are all the type of attacks you can see, one can see on your endpoints. So let me ping you that, right? So you should see that, and probably let's say like, command and script interpreter, you can go and look at it. Okay, what is this doing? What is the command and script interpreter? What is this? If it's a PowerShell a command, like what is PowerShell? Adversely use PowerShell commands and script execution. PowerShell is everything related to, and who are the attack groups which are using PowerShell, right? What are the mitigations of it, right? So you can click on each individual attacker, and then you can see how he would have used it. Yeah, so you can look at it and identify like how and what, if there is an article which is written here, how it would be available, and how would it look like in an actual attack. So you can follow the links from within here. If again you need to attack on, no mitigations, techniques, tactics, no, there is if you need to really understand how attack evaluations, right? So MITRE ATT&CK evaluation. This is one good site which you will want to read it when you're talking about an EDR solution. So let's say suppose you want to look at how CrowdStrike really works, or suppose Carbon Black really works. So where is Carbon Black here? Where is that? Hey.
It's down. It's down there.
Oh, there you go. Sorry. Probably. Yeah, you can look at all results. Then you can say now procedure user executed a doc file. Okay, so the technique is this one. Criteria, some process was run. General alert was detected. So you can click here and then see an image of what CrowdStrike is identifying or Carbon Black is identifying, right? Then you go back, click on the page 2, and you can look at other process execution of how it was identified. right? This is one other resource which you can use to understand the flow of an attack, and basically trying to look at how a tool detects it, right? It says, establish a C2 channel from this IP address to this IP on 123 on port 1234. So how does it look like? This is your triage documentation, and then your you look like this one, right? You see this?
Yeah.
So how the process is flowing. So net connection. So there are certain terminologies which you'll pick up easily when you go through this one.
Okay.
So now you see that, spawned interactive CMD. How do you think that spawned interactive CMD will look like? Now the command prompt.exe // .pipe and this one. What does it mean? Right? So what does it mean? Which, command.e invoking, invoke the application PowerShell. Once the PowerShell is executed, it observes looking for document extensions in the stored within the app data draft.zip for later exfiltration, right? So .lnk select everything, and then it looks like it looks at how it's calling PowerShell and everything else. So that's how you'll see the alerts from a tool, and the list is not small. The list is long. It has got too many things in there, which will only help you understand the tool better. Make sense? You're confused,
No, it makes sense.
or you think that this is not helping you at all?
No, it makes sense. It gives me a broader understanding of some things I say, but I don't even know much about it.
Okay. Awesome. You have any questions? I think I'll have to run for a meeting.
I have questions, but it's not really on this right now. Or it's something like you were talking about. I was seeing talking about execution file.exe. I mean, one time I was asked if email if email was sent, and how would I find out who opened it? And
Who opened the email?
yes, and
from your logs.
Yeah, what log there?
Sorry?
What log would that be?
Your email logs, your Exchange log, your MS Exchange logs, or whatever email system you're using. That will be the system which will help you identify that logs.
So, okay, the email system the company is using from email log.
Yes. So every organization will either use Outlook or will use any other Outlook, any other email systems, right? So that will get logged into your Splunk or any other SIM solution. So you can call them that your email index is equal to email, and from there on you'll search like what is the subject, whether their email has an attachment or not.
Okay.
Okay, but you'll not be able to know who opened it. That is difficult because that's an action which happens on your endpoint.
Okay.
Okay, but who opened it, you'll not be able to find out.
All right. Okay, that's fine. So that has to do through the email log. So, because I mean, they were saying if it's .exe, if the file contain .exe. So I was thinking if the open it, the .exe file runs on, does it run on somewhere else? So that's why I was just wondering, because I couldn't answer that, because I was just thinking maybe .exe, if there's another log there, .exe runs on.
So that would again be a different story, right? That will be a different story because you're running a file from an email system which you've downloaded. Where the file runs from? It runs from your local system, not from the email server, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when it runs from your email system runs from your local system will identify the file execution. So you can look at this one, your Alien World logs here, just for the understanding of the logs. You can look at your say suppose G Suite, your Google Suite, right? You can say web server, NIDS, Azure, AWS, cloud. Environment testing. Yeah, okay, Azure Cloud Activity. So you can look at multiple fields from here. You can say email, right? Email subject, sender, reply, email, destination, subject, everything, and add it here. You'll see if the data is available for you, right? So you can look at it if the data is really available for you. Yeah, see here, user email address. So if I click on it, I'll get an email address, right? I get this token authorization. So what is this? It's from your Google system, right? Gmail.com, right? So that's one set of logs. Then I say user move. This is basically all different type of activity. I need to find out what type of activity is this one, right? So if this is there, then it'll appear here somewhere. Is your G Suite audit apps, right? The G Suite audit apps. G Suite audit is where it happened, like what happened with an email address, whether the user was suspended or where it has happened. Deleted group, user created the password change, and next logon was set up for him. And this is the actual log. So the email log is not available. We can find out, but I'm running for a meeting right now in another 5 minutes. But I can find out that for tomorrow and then share the information with you.
All right, that's right.
Yeah. Any other questions before we conclude the call?
For you? What are some of the cybersecurity bodies that you belong to, though?
What do you mean by that?
Like some of the organizations that you're part of.
Oh, you mean certifications?
No, like cybersecurity organization that you're a member of.
See, I am basically not. So since I've done my CISSP, I'm part of ISC Square. I hold a ISC Square certification from there. I am a part of Cloud Security Alliance as well. I have a CCSK cloud certification as well. So part of that. But you don't associate with a cybersecurity body individually. You can do a certification and then get associated with that.
Oh, okay.
Companies can associate with that when they do certifications on their way, when they meet a compliance from that particular body, say cybersecurity body.
Okay, yeah, because I was asked what organization that a cybersecurity organization that I'm a member of, so I didn't know what to say.
Yeah, I mean, like that's a very open-ended question. Like, what does it mean? Are they looking at membership that I'm part of, a member of a particular cybersecurity online organization like ISC Square, or what? Because you can get a free login for ISC Square or ISACA or forever, whatever that is, right? Yeah. So you can be a free member of that. So you can be part of that. You're looking at, or LinkedIn Learning for that matter, right? You can be part of that, but again, depends upon what they're looking for. Okay. Awesome. Okay. I'll let you know. Sorry, I'm running short of time here. I'll probably Ravi will disconnect the call and then
I'll speak with good luck. You can go ahead, Kumar. I think we'll meet up later.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Yeah, have a good day.